Are you ready to start the one with all the sweaters? I am too. Let your By Crafty bestie show you the way. Here we go. Hello everybody and welcome to the Shoop 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 knit cardigan. I just love saying that. It's so much fun. As you know, this is part of the 5th annual Turkey Trot Make-Along event hosted at marleybird.com. Hopefully by now you have collected all of your materials and you've gathered the instructions for this section of the pattern. In case you don't know, if you are part of the VIP experience, you already have the entire PDF available to you. Simply go to the module for the Shoop 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 ad-free PDF pattern and you can find instructions for what to download there. Here's a little hint, you're also going to find a special row by row checkoff sheet to help you off with this set of the instructions. I mean, it's a game changer, you guys. It makes things so super easy. Okay, let's talk about this video. This is the day one video and it is a robust one, you guys. There's a lot of information we have to go over and I'm going to get you started with this pattern. So make sure you have gone to the bathroom, you have yourself a snack and a drink sitting by so that way you can dive in and watch the whole video as one, and then you can go back to the sections that you need to go to as needed, all right? A couple things I need you to pinky promise for me. The first thing is I want to make sure you're going to give yourself some grace and some patience as we are learning this sweater. Some of you are beginners, some of you are experienced. There is a multitude of you here in this Turkey Trot event and we are happy to have all of you. But it's important, both as beginners and experienced people, that we give ourselves some grace and a chance to just learn something a little bit new, even if it is just garter stitch and just some increases. We want to take our time, and if you mess up, it's all right. It's just sticks and string. You got this. The second thing is I want you to promise me that you will get up and stretch and take breaks at least every hour. I know it seems like I'm being silly, but we want to protect our money makers, so we want to make sure we stretch our hands, stand up, give our legs a stretch, maybe go get another snack, maybe go to the bathroom again. I don't know where you are in your life's journey, but that happens to be what I do all the time. So those two things are very important. Give yourself some grace and give yourself a break so that way you can make sure you can withstand all the way through this entire pattern and get your sweater complete. Are you guys ready to dive in? Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the yarn and the needles and the notions that I want to make sure you have with you today, okay? What I have down here is just a kind of a spattering of different yarns that I said you could make this sweater out of, right? So I have, of course, the macchiato cakes right here. This is the color Bewitched that the sample right behind me was made out of. And then this color here, it's a black and white colorway. It's gorgeous. It's called Solitude. And then this one is actually the colorway that the crochet sweater was made out of, because you know I am by Crafty, and of course there is a crochet sweater as well, so if you want to make that, you can. This is called Soulful. This colorway is called Soulful. So you absolutely can be using the Karen macchiato cakes, but if you looked at the blog post that we originally put out, we also suggested some other yarns. So I wanted you to see that there is Wonder Fluff. This is what Wonder Fluff looks like. It's very, very fluffy. This is the Swish Bulky Weight, and if you are part of the VIP, this is what I made the Breckenridge sweater out of, is the Swish Bulky Weight. It's luxurious, it's lovely, I love it. This is the Wool of the Andes Bulky Weight. It's a little bit more, I like to call it more earthy, a little bit more rough. It's not as soft as the Swish, and it's because it's not a superwash. It's a 100% wool, but gosh, do I love this. I have another pattern coming out in this soon, and this is just lovely to work with, and the stitch definition is divine. This is a yarn that I have had a chance to use quite a bit, but always in the DK weight. This is an Aran heavyweight, so it's not quite bulky, but I think this yarn would absolutely work for this project. You just have to do a gauge swatch to know if that would work for you. Now, speaking of gauge swatch, this pattern was written using size 10 knitting needles. Right here, I have a couple different knitting needles sitting next to me. They are both size 10, but they are different lengths. This sweater is made in rows, so it is important that we have a needle length that is long enough to accommodate the number of stitches we will have on our needle and the bulkiness of our yarn. So even though I absolutely love my signature needles here, they are not long enough. So I will be using my ChowGoo needles that I love, 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 and I'm going to try out their new spin swivel. I think it's called swivel, the swivel cord, so that way I can give those a whirl. But I will be using size 10 circulars, and I can accommodate all of my stitches right on here. Size 10 is what I used for my gauge swatch. That is what worked for the gauge of my pattern. If you need to go up a size or down a size to obtain gauge, or even 2 sizes or 3 sizes, whatever it is, I want you to know that is 100% okay. That's why we do gauge. You need to know what your knitting needs to measure in order to get the exact measurements that my knitting gets. So whether you use a size 10 needle to get that, a size 8 needle, or a size 11 needle, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the thing that matters is that you get the same measurement that I do. Now, more often than not, I will give you a gauge that is a blocked gauge, and this is just like that. This is a blocked gauge. So as you're doing your gauge swatch, you do want to take the time to wash and block your swatch so that way you can make sure that it's not going to overly grow once the piece is complete, because sometimes you'll get a yarn and by the time you get the gauge on the swatch, when it hasn't been washed, you're like, oh, this is great. But then you make it an entire sweater out of it, and all of a sudden it's too big, and it's because the yarn itself has stretched over time because of the washing and blocking that takes place, or just the weight of the yarn pulls down on the fibers. So you want to make sure you can account for that. So you want to do a gauge swatch. And that's where we will begin today. We're going to do a simple gauge swatch in Garter Stitch, and then I'm going to show you how you would wash and block that gauge swatch so that you can ensure a proper fitting sweater. Don't skip this step. I know there are a lot of you who are thinking, I'm fine. I always get gauge. I don't need to get gauge. Don't throw that whole sentence out. Gauge is not a standard, you guys. It is subjective to every knitter. So just like I said, I used a size 10 to get my gauge, but you might need a different size needle, and you might be using a different yarn than I used, and you want to make sure that the yarn you're using works with the needle size and everything to get that gauge, okay? So please, please, please do not skip this step. If you have never made sweaters before, even more important to not skip this step, because you're making something for the first time that's actually going to fit a body. You need to make sure that these stitches are all the correct size, okay? So as silly as it sounds to do a little swatch and garter stitch, it's extremely important. Okay. With the gauge swatch, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to get you started with learning the Longtail Caston and how to knit garter stitch. Especially important for those of you who are beginners and might not be familiar with that terminology. So here's what we're going to do. When you do the Longtail Caston, it's important that you have a tail that is long enough for the number of stitches you will be casting on. For our little swatch here, we are going to cast on 25 stitches. So we want to put a slip knot directly onto our needle, and we want to make sure that we have enough tail to accommodate 25 stitches. Honestly, just guesstimate at this point, okay? You want to take the tail of your yarn and put that over your thumb. Take your working yarn, the one that's attached to your ball of yarn, and put that over your finger. Grab the ends, these two ends down here, grab those right down here with your fingers at the bottom. And what you will do is get yourself a slingshot. Can you see how that looks like a slingshot? All right, we're gonna take the tip of our needle now, and we're gonna hold on to that slip stitch or the slip knot that's on our needle. Go down to the palm of our hand, so right beneath our thumb, and scoop up our thumb. Swivel around to the tip of our finger and go down your finger. Now you have this little window right here that's created by your thumb going through that yarn. We're going to take our needle and swivel right through that window. Can you see how I just went right through that window? Now I let the yarn fall off my thumb. I pull the legs of my yarn and it pulls that snug on my needle. Let's do this again. Over the thumb, over the finger, grasp the legs. I have my stitches here, all good to go. Go to the bottom of my thumb, right here by the palm of my hand. Scoop up my thumb, swivel to the tip of my finger, go down my finger. That creates this window right here. We swivel through the window and then let it fall off your thumb and pull. Up your thumb, down your finger, through the window, off your thumb. Up your thumb, down your finger, through the window, off the thumb. You keep adjusting yourself as you get these on here. You keep getting back to where the slingshot. You go up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. If this is a little too tricky for you, there is a way to do it where you use both hands at the same time and it resembles knitting. So I want to show you how to do that as well. Okay, so I have my tail right here. I'm going to grab my tail, literally grab my tail. And I have my thumb right here, right? I'm going to go over top of my tail, scoop underneath it, and then swivel up. Okay, see how that looks just like it did, how I had it before? All right. Take my needle at this point. I'm not doing anything with that over there. I'm just letting that hang out. Take my needle, go to the base of my thumb, and scoop up my thumb, okay? Imagine my thumb is a knitting needle. I'm going into my stitch on my knitting needle. If I'm doing that, I now take my working yarn, which is attached to my ball of yarn, and I wrap my yarn around my knitting needle, just like I would if I was knitting. Hang on to this to give it some tension. Grasp my right hand needle. And now, since my yarn is wrapped around my needle, I want to come out my stitch, right? Just like I would if I was knitting. So I come out my stitch, take my needle off of my stitch, right? Let it fall off and just give it a little tug. So grasp my yarn, scoop it up with my thumb, go into the stitch, right? My thumb is my knitting needle. I go into my stitch, wrap my yarn around my needle, come out my stitch, and off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Notice I'm holding, when I grab this, I'm keeping that tension the whole time. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Okay, so those are two different ways to do the longtail cast on. Go ahead and practice the longtail cast on if you've never done it before. Practice it a couple times so you can get used to it. And then I want you to cast on a total of 25 stitches. Once you get those 25 stitches all cast on, you will grab the other end of your needle. And yes, it's going to be a really long cord. Remember, this needle is the one we're using for our sweater. And that's a really good note for me to mention. You want to make sure you are doing your gauge swatch with the same yarn and the same needles you plan on using for your sweater, okay? Don't use different needles, don't use a different yarn. You have to use the same yarn and the same needles that you're doing your sweater with, okay? So you grab your other end of your needle, you position the needle that has all your stitches on it, position that in your left hand. Have your other end of the needle in your right hand. This cord is just going to hang out down there. Even though it's connected, we're going to treat this as if it's just a plain back and forth, and this is how we will be doing our sweater as well. Make sure you have tucked your tail out of the way so it's not in the way at all. and we're simply going to knit. And when you knit every single row, it's called garter stitch, and when you purl every single row, it's called garter stitch. So we are choosing to do knits in the garter stitch, okay? So we will go into our stitch here, yarn over our needle, come out the stitch, and let it come off. In, around, out, off. Does that sound familiar? In, around, out, off. It's exactly what I just said for the Longtail Caston. Let me show you with the yarn in my right hand. As you're working these, you gently push them up so they're up to the tip of your needle here. You go in, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. Now, one thing I want to make sure you're aware of, when you are doing this, do not pull your working yarn. Don't pull it up like this. What that does is it pulls the stitch underneath and it makes the stitch that's on your needle super tight. So you do not want to pull your yarn up. If you're going to tug your yarn, tug it back like I'm tugging down. I'm not tugging up here, I'm tugging down. So if you're going to tug, tug down, but do not overly tighten your stitches. You want to make sure that your stitches are nice and consistent. And consistency is the name of the game, you guys. As you're making your whole sweater, you have to keep all of your garter stitch extremely consistent. So you want to make sure that all of your stitches are the same size as the needle you are using. So make sure you are moving your stitches each time down to the barrel of the needle, so that way they're getting the correct size. They're not being made and held right up here at the tip where it's tapered. And make sure as you are pulling that yarn through, that stitch that's created, it should be the same size as your knitting needle. That's how knitting needles work, you guys. That's why there are different size knitting needles. You want the stitch you're creating to be the same size as your needle. Your needle is the guide for you. So if you are doing that correctly, you can then increase or decrease your needle size depending on how you knit, according to what you need in order to get the gauge for this project, which, by the way, the garter stitch gauge for this project is 14 stitches and 26 rows. Okay, 14 stitches and 26 rows. And I do want to, I almost messed up there. I didn't get the stitch all the way through. I do want to mention that as you do garter stitch, it really takes 2 rows to get the ridge of your garter stitch. So it will seem like it is taking forever sometimes because it doesn't seem it's growing, but it's really because it takes 2 rows to get 1 ridge. Now you notice I got to the end of the row and I just changed my needles just like I would if they were straight needles. I put the needle that had all the stitches on it over into my left side here, and I'm getting ready to knit onto my spare needle now, and I continue on. I've turned my work and I am looking at purl bumps. That's exactly right, because I just knit the whole last row. So of course, when I turn it, I'm gonna look at the back side of the knits, which are purls. And that is perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want to just knit, knit, knit. So we're going to continue knitting just like this until your piece, your little gauge swatch here, measures about 4 inches, y'all. 4 inches, that's right. So sit back, relax, hit pause in this video, and finish your gauge swatch, all right? We're gonna do this together. I'm gonna sit here and knit mine as well. I'll see you back here when it's all done. Welcome back. Did you get your 4 inches? I have just about 4 inches, I think. I think it is 4 inches. Yeah, I have a little bit more than 4 inches, and I'm all right with that. So now I want to bind this off. Don't worry, you will have plenty of yarn to complete your project, even with several gauge swatches if you end up needing to do that. So we want to bind this off so we can wash and block it. We will bind off in the same manner that we will bind off our actual sweater, okay? So we want to make sure that we do not bind off too snug. So go ahead, knit 2 stitches, have the back stitch, jump up and over the front, But once again, do not pull that yarn, okay? We want to make sure that that stitch remains the size it's supposed to be, up and over. So it's just a normal bind off, but we want to make sure it is not too tight. And what happens, a lot of people will give an extra tug on the working yarn as they're binding off, and it makes the bind off too tight. So we definitely do not want to do that, okay? Make sure that the yarn itself, as it becomes the stitch, it's the same size as your knitting needle. Every time you knit a stitch, and have the back jump the front, and do not give an extra tug, okay? An extra tug on your working yarn tightens that stitch, and that's when you get a super tight bind off. We do not want that. So we're just going to bind off all of these stitches. When you get to the very end and you bind off that last stitch, go ahead and cut your yarn. Leave yourself a nice little tail so that way you can weave that in. Yes, you want to weave in your tails on your swatches also. And I know that I could just pull this string out so it comes all the way out, but I am going to go ahead and just pull the string through the last loop on my hook, or on my the last loop that I had, and just give it a tug. All right, so here I have a swatch, and my swatch on its own with 25 stitches and I don't know how many rows yet measures just about 6.5 inches wide. And then what did I say? Just 4 1/4 tall. Okay, so right off the needles, my swatch looks like it isn't working, right? It looks like I have too many stitches in a 4-inch period or a 4-inch area than what I need for my actual sweater. Here's the thing. When I wash and block though, I know that my stitches are going to gently stretch a little bit because that's the nature of the yarn I'm using, and I will get a perfect 14 stitches for 4 inches. So the next step I want to do is wash and block my swatch in the same manner I plan on washing and blocking my sweater. So let's go ahead and head to the bathroom. And welcome to my bathroom. I'm going to do a voiceover for this part of the video. I will first start off by filling up my basin with lukewarm water and putting in a little bit of wool wash. I want to use the same washing agent I plan on using for my sweater so that I can see how the swatch will work up. Now, I apologize, my phone decided to tilt and get out of position, but you're going to take your swatch and just place it right on top of the water. You want to let the swatch naturally go down to the bottom of the basin. Don't wring it, don't squish it, don't do anything. Let it rest in the water, absorb all the water, and you're going to let it rest for about 20-30 minutes or so. Once it's done, you'll come back and drain the sink. And when you go to scoop up your swatch or your sweater, you want to make sure that you are scooping everything up at the same time, that there is no part of the sweater or the swatch that droops out the side of your hands, okay? Because that will add extra stretch to the fabric. Then squish the fabric to get some water out. However, this is a rinse-free wool wash, but I like to rinse it, so that's what I'm doing here. And you notice literally just like pressing the fabric. I'm squeezing it. I'm not wringing it or doing anything like that. Then I place it on a dry towel And once I've done that, I will roll it up like a burrito, nice and snug. That way I can try and get any extra water out. I like to squish that little burrito back and forth. You can see I'm just doing it very easily with my hands. I've been known to even stand on it before if it's like a large project. And then I go and block it. Now I'm at the blocking table and I will go ahead and unroll my towel and gently remove my swatch. If this was my sweater, I would gently remove it. Once again, you want to make sure you don't let any bit of it like overstretch. So really kind of hold it all as best you can in the palm of your hand. Then I'll use these foam blocking boards. I got mine on Amazon. It's really wonderful. The link is in the actual pattern. You're going to take your swatch and you're going to gently shape it on the blocking board. You do not want to overstretch your swatch at this point. If you are overstretching it, your fabric is going to be way out of shape. I mean, look at that. You do not want to do that. You don't want to be like, how big can I make this get? How wide can I make this get? No, we don't want to do that. So ultimately, we want to pin this out to the correct gauge and see if we like the fabric we are getting. Now I know for the 25 stitches, I should have my gauge swatch measure about 7 and a bit as far as how wide it should be. And each one of these squares are an inch wide. So I'm going to go ahead and use these really fantastic blocking combs. They're awesome. They're on Amazon also. And I'm going to pin this swatch 7 inches and a little bit more. Okay, so I stretch it out just enough to get to the correct gauge. Make sure you pin it on the stitches side, not the row, Marley, geez. And then once that's done, be like, all right, that's good. Now, once we've done it with the stitches, we need to know how many rows from the bottom to the top. And remember, the garter stitch takes 2 rows to complete 1 ridge. So we will count this, each ridge, to make sure that we get 26 ridges within 4 inches. Okay, so that is 4 inches. So we're going to count all the way up. I'm counting, and I'll get up to 26 and I will maneuver my swatch so that way I have the 26th row inside of that 4 inches. And then I will take a comb and pin it in place. Once I've done that, I then go through and I put the combs all around my swatch so that way it doesn't get any bigger or any smaller, and I'm gonna let it sit. I want to let it dry. It's best to have it dry with a fan in front of it. Do not put it in a window in like sunlight. You could actually discolor your yarn. So you want to make sure you're just letting it dry naturally. Yeah. Once it's dry, you will unpin it and let it relax and take a look and make sure that the gauge still matches what you want. You like the fabric, then you're all set to begin working on your shoop, shoop, shoop knit cardigan. Aren't you glad you did a gauge swatch? I know you are. So proud of you for finishing your gauge swatch. Now let's take a look at the pattern and decide what size you should make your sweater. Right here is the ad-free PDF for the Shoop 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 knit cardigan. You can see on the first page here that it's just a brief description of what the cardigan is. And then here is the general information. This is exactly where you found all the information about your gauge, all the notions, all the materials, but it also gives you the different sizes. Now, what you will notice is I have sizes written up here based on if you're just trying to figure out what size you should make and you're like, I'm usually a large, you could just go by your instructions there. However, it's very helpful to look at the actual measurements down here to help decide what size you should be making. These are the finished measurements. This is why we did a gauge swatch. Based on the number of stitches per inch I got in my swatch on my pattern, these are the measurements of the finished sample. So given that this sample is supposed to be worn with 0 to 2 inches of ease, you can take your own bust measurement and then look up here at the different measurements and decide which one is best for you. Don't let the term ease scare you. It's just a fancy way of saying the difference between your own body's measurement and the measurement of the sweater. You don't want it to be too big. If you do that, it's just not going to fit quite right around your shoulders and your armpit area. So you want to make sure that you have 0 to 2 inches of ease. So for example, I am a 52, 53 inch bust. And so I have a decision if I wanted to do the 52 1/4 or the 56 1/4 size, right? So if I'm looking at all of this, let me get my little pointer here, it works better. I can see that the extra small is the first size outside of the parenthesis. Then it's small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X, depending on where I am. So knowing that, if I come down here, here's my first size outside of the parentheses. So that's my extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X. So based on the fact I'm supposed to have 0 to 2 inches of ease, I should be making the 2X size. And just so you know, that's exactly the size I made. That sample right there and the Breckenridge sample, both of them are the size 2X. So when you see pictures of those pieces on me, that's what you're looking at. A 52, 53 inch bust in a size 2X sweater, okay? So for that example, this is the size I would choose. I would not want to go up to the 56 1/4, even though I typically make myself a size 3X. That's not what I want. I definitely want to go to the 52 1/4. I want it to 0 to 2 inches of ease. All right, now listen, that is how I intended the sweater to be worn. If you want it to be a little bit less ease, if you want it to be more ease, that's your prerogative. This is your sweater. You're the one that has to wear it. But I'm just helping you choose the size based on how I wrote the pattern. So that is how you're going to choose the size you make. Also, as you're working through this, if you have printed off the pattern, go ahead and use a highlighter and highlight the size you're going to make right here on this page. What that will do is help you when you put this down, you pick it back up, you're like, what numbers am I following? You can always go back to this page and follow along with the correct numbers. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th number in. So down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th number in, 27 inches long, and I can go on in that manner. Is that helpful to you guys? I really love using the highlighters, and if they're erasable highlighters, even better. But do yourself a favor, because no matter what, you're going to forget things, and it's just easier to, make it easy for yourself. It's easier to make it easy for yourself, and it doesn't even sound right. But anyways, and just make a note in your pattern, so that way you can always go back to know exactly where you are. Okay, so that is how you're going to choose the correct size for you. Once you've done that, let's go ahead, get your yarn and the needles that you decided were best for you based on your gauge swatch, and let's get started on the first part of this pattern. I have my yarn and I have my needles, but before I cast on stitches, I want you to understand that we will be making this sweater from the top down to the bottom. That's why your schematic is upside down, because you'll actually start right here with your neck edge stitches, and then we are going to increase on the raglan diagonal here. That's where you're, if you were to think about starting up here at the neck and going down at a diagonal down to your armpit, that is the shaping we're going to create. And we will be working back and forth to create that, okay? So knowing that and going on with the pattern, I can see that right here for the yoke, for the size I'm supposed to make, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm supposed to cast on 92 stitches. So once again, I would go ahead, I would take my highlighter and I would just highlight 92. Then I will take my yarn and my needles, move my pattern aside, and using the Longtail Caston method, I want to cast on 92 stitches. If you have trouble keeping count when you're casting on, place a marker every 20th stitch or so just to help you keep count. And then you can go ahead and remove those afterwards so that way they don't interfere with the markers you will be using for your actual raglan shaping. So let's cast on the number of stitches you need for your sweater. Go ahead, hit pause, get those cast on, and then join me back here. That hard part is done. Now it's time to jump into the actual pattern. And you'll notice that the very first row we do is a row of purl. Now, Marley, you said this is garter stitch at the top of the sweater. Why am I purling the first row? Well, I really like the way the finishing looks when you purl the first row. It kind of has the first couple rows, the cast on row and the purl row, cup in on itself, and it looks really nice. So we don't have to do any extra finishing when all of the sweater is complete. So once you've cast on the number of stitches you need to do, we are then going to purl a row. So all you do is pick up your work, put the needle in your hand that has the working yarn attached, and we're going to purl this whole row. So to purl, you go into the stitch from back to front. Take your yarn and you want to wrap around your needle like so. You're going to go over top of your needle. Then pull that stitch out and then off. So in from back to front, go over top of your needle and around, then pop out that stitch and off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. If you happen to purl in this way, where you go underneath, it is not incorrect. It's just that it places your stitches on your needle oriented a different direction. So you have to compensate by knitting through the back leg if you happen to do that. But what I want you to try and do, if that's not something that you naturally do, is take your yarn when you're purling, make sure you go up and over that right hand needle, go over top to purl. Okay, so we're going to go all the way down the row and purl. Now I am naturally a continental purler, so I hold my yarn in my left hand. But if you are an English style, you do want to make sure that your yarn is in front of your needles and then just purl the row. Okay, again, going over top and make sure you purl. Again, do not tug on your yarn or anything, okay? Make sure these stitches are all the same size as your needle, just like you did on your gauge swatch. Now I'm going to go ahead and move my yarn to my left hand because that is my preferred way to purl, and I am much faster that way. So let's get down this row of purls and I'll meet you down at the other side. To the end of your row of purls, go ahead and turn your work, and the next row we're simply going to knit. Now you know how to knit. I know you just did your gauge swatch, so go ahead and knit this entire row. If you happen to have any markers in place as you come to them on this next row, remove them, because the following row we will be putting markers in place to help us with our raglan shaping, okay? Now, at this point, your work looks a little something like this. A whole lot of nothing, right? It looks like a whole lot of nothing. It looks like some stockinette stitch. Don't worry, that's exactly what we want. It's going to make it so that we don't have any extra finishing at the end of our project. I want you to pay attention. This next row is one of the most important rows of the entire piece because it sets you up for success with your raglan shaping. As we look at the pattern here again, you can see we are on row 3 and it says marker setup row. This is where we are going to get our markers in place so that way we know exactly where the front of our sweater is, the sleeves of our sweater, the back of the sweater, so on and so forth. So placing our markers in the correct spot at this point will help us in the future sections, okay? So this is a very, very, very important row. So if you need to hit pause, go gather yourself so that you can concentrate a little bit more, that's totally fine. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump in with those stitch markers. You know, this is part of my favorite part. Here we go, you guys. So for my size, I want to purl 5. So I'm going to purl 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to place a marker. So I'm going to grab a marker and I'm going to place it directly onto my needle. Those first 5 stitches represent my button band. Now I'm going to set up my stitches for my right front, and I have to purl 11 for the size I'm making. Once I get those 11 stitches on there, I will place a marker, and then I purl 1, and then I place another marker, okay? That purl 1 is going to go down the whole line of my raglan for the entire sweater. So with that second marker in place, I then go ahead and purl 14 for my sleeve. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I will place a marker, purl 1, and then place another marker. Again, that is the raglan for my sleeve, okay? Now I am to where I'm setting up stitches for my back. So this is going to be a larger section, of course. So I have to purl 28 for my size. Once you get the number of stitches you need on yours, go ahead, place a marker, purl 1, because we're going to set up the raglan for the other side of our back, and then place another marker. Now we're back to the other sleeve. So for me, I have to purl 14. There's my 14. I'm going to place a marker. Then I purl 1. Place another marker. And I am now on the left side here, so I will purl 11. I will place another marker, and that leaves me for 5 stitches for the button band. So grab another marker here, and then I finish off my 5 stitches of my button band here, all in purls. And voila! My most important round is done. Now what I want to do is I want to set this down on the table and really take a look at what we're looking at to help you better understand what it is we just set up, okay? Okay, I'm maneuvering my needles here so you can better see what's going on. But right here, these 5 stitches at the beginning and the end, those are the button band. So if you think of those as overlapping, okay, those are going to overlap each other for the button band, okay? And then what we have here, this is our right front of our sweater. This is our raglan shaping, okay? This is our sleeve. This is our back raglan shaping. This is our entire back. This is the other side of our back raglan shaping. This is our sleeve. This is the other side of our front raglan shaping. And this is our other front. Can you see that? So what we have just set up is really going to guide us for our entire project now, because at these points here, at these 4 points, we will be working increases along there and along there. And then at these points, we will be working some buttonholes so that way we get a button band, okay? So as we go through the rest of the pattern here, we're gonna have increased rows, and we're gonna have rows that we will be working every row will be working our button band, but some rows will have an actual buttonhole in it and some rows won't. Now I am gonna let you know, if you do not want to have buttonholes, maybe you decide you want to use those really great jewel pedestal buttons. That's actually what I have on the piece back there. That one has buttonholes, but I put the pedestal button in there as well. Maybe you don't want buttonholes. Maybe you just want to use those pedestal buttons, or you don't want buttonholes at all. You could actually eliminate the hole and just keep everything in garter stitch for that section and just let it be. But I will leave that completely up to you. Just know that those stitches are meant to overlap. So that just means your fronts will be just that much bigger if you just let them be. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially considering we are keeping this at 0 ease. And so it actually will look fairly nice, but I will leave that up to you if you don't want to do buttonholes. But this is the setup for the rest of our sweater. So if this is not correct, you are going to be really disappointed in the rest of the sweater. So really make sure and double check your counts, make sure you have your markers all in the right place, and you'll be set to go. Okay, VIPers, I have a treat for you. What you will notice when you downloaded this pattern is there was a row by row check off spreadsheet. And what you can see here is every single size has its own spreadsheet. So like this is the extra small, there's the small. I can come all the way to the 2X size right here, and I can see, look at your own, I know these are really small. I can see that I have my cast on row, my setup rows, and then it has everything written out for me for my increases, okay? And this will take you all the way through day 2, but you can check off each of your rows as you complete them right out here on your check sheet. It also gives you the total number of stitches you should have on your needles after each row. So this is incredibly helpful. And this right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is a bonus that you get for being part of the VIP experience. So I hope you will take advantage of this because it will be extremely helpful. All right, let's go back and talk to everybody else. Now that we have set up our sweater, it's time for us to pull our pattern back in, and we can see that we have an increased section 1, and as you carry on with the pattern, you will also notice there's an increased section 2 and an increased section 3. All of these increased sections are built differently, so you will want to follow each set of instructions as they are written. But honestly, once I get you started with increased section 1 and I talk to you about how you would work your way through the button band parts of each row, I think you'll be set to go and you could carry on with your project. So let's go ahead and move on to increased section 1. And just like before, I want to grab my highlighter and I want to highlight all of the numbers that pertain to me. It just makes my life so much easier. So again, I'm doing the 5th number in, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I will highlight the 5th number in of the parentheses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come around, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And right here, that's pretty easy. Now, one thing I didn't mark on here yet as my highlight is the stitch that's like in between my markers. So let's read through this. Work 5 stitches in buttonhole band pattern, slip marker. We're going to come back to buttonhole band pattern. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Then it says star, knit to your marker, yarn over, slip marker, knit 1. Slip marker, yarn over. Repeat from star 3 more times. So you would knit to your marker, yarn over, slip marker, knit 1, slip marker, yarn over 3 times. Then it says knit to the marker, slip marker, knit 5. So all of these numbers I highlighted, those are the stitch counts I now have in each section of my piece. So for example, looking at this here that we were looking at before, I can see that I'm supposed to have 30 stitches on the back, so I would have counted right here, and I will have 30 stitches on my back. I will have 12 stitches on each of the fronts, so each front here, 12 stitches, not including the button band. That still has 5 on each of those. And then I can see that I'm supposed to have 16 stitches on the sleeve here and 16 stitches on the sleeve here. Okay, can you see that? I will have a total of 100 stitches. You guys with me on that? So ultimately what I've done, I've worked increases at each of the points. We work our increase right here to start with, then it says repeat that 3 times. So you work to marker, work your increase, that was 1. Work to marker, work your increase, that's 2. Work to marker, work your increase, that's 3. Work to the end of the row, do your button band, and Bob's your uncle. If knitting top-down sweaters is new to you and you saw all these words, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. Hopefully this makes more sense to you now that you understand where the placement of the markers are and why they're there. Now, as you continue on through the pattern, you'll see that on row 2, it's just a knitting row with the exception of the buttonhole band. And then when we get to row 3, we're back to an increased row and keeping our buttonhole band. Now, let's talk about the buttonhole band because those stitches, those 5 stitches on your buttonhole band, they're going to be 2 different rows where you're setting up by building a double yarn over, and the following row you will be working stitches into that double yarn over so that way you create a buttonhole. But where do you find those instructions? If you look at the start of your pattern, right above where it says videos, you'll see where it says buttonhole band pattern. And it is worked over 5 stitches and it gives you the instructions for all of those stitches, okay? So row 1 on your buttonhole band is the same as row 1 on your increase section 1. Row 2 is the same as your row 2. Row 3 is row 3 here. Row 4 is row 4 here. Now, it's on row 3 that we introduce ourselves to the decrease and the double yarn over. And it's on row 4 where we introduce ourselves to working into that double yarn over to create our buttonhole. Once we know how to do our buttonholes after 3 and 4, the rest literally is just following the instructions, because by that point you will know how to do a yarn over, a double yarn over, a knit 2 together, and then just following along with the instructions. The hardest part will be making sure you keep track of where you are in the pattern. So if you have a checkoff sheet or you have a tally sheet or some way that you like to keep track of what row you're on, I encourage you to do that. Those of you in the VIP, you have a row by row checkoff sheet, so make sure you grab that and use that to your advantage because it will help you out as you follow along with your pattern. So let's go ahead. We're going to continue on with our very first row of our increase section 1 so you can learn how to do the actual yarn over, okay? And to do that, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, so let me adjust this. And away we go. The first 5 stitches on our piece here are the button band. So we're going to follow row 1 of the button band. So you will slip the first stitch as if to purl, and then you will knit 4. Right? So then I slip my marker, and it's at this point I will knit to my marker. So I knit to my next marker. I'm going to yarn over, slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. So here we go. Let's knit to the next marker. So I'm to my marker. Now I'm going to yarn over. So I'm going to take my yarn from the back, bring it between my needles to the front, and then lay it over top and over my right hand needle. Okay, it works the same if my yarn was in my other hand. My yarn is in back, bring it to the front, go over top and over my right hand needle. And so that yarn right there that's just laid there on the needle, that is now my yarn over. I would slip my marker, knit my next stitch, slip my marker, and then yarn over again. So I bring my yarn from the back to the front, over top of my right hand needle, and continue on. And I would do this 3 times, so 3 more times. So I will knit to my next marker and I will do it again. So let me show you one more time. I'm to my next marker. I yarn over my right hand needle. I like to put my hand or my finger right there on that yarn over so it doesn't go anywhere. Slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over again. You will have 2 yarn overs, okay? Knit to my next marker. To my next marker, I yarn over, slip my marker, right? Don't let that yarn over go away. Knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. Don't let that yarn over go away. And then knit to the next marker. Okay, so yarn over, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, yarn over. Now I will knit to my button band marker. Okay, I'm going to knit to my button band marker, which I'm not going to lie, I purposely made it orange so that way I don't get it confused with any of my other ones, because the other ones are all those other shades. Slip my marker, and now I just knit the last 5 stitches. Okay, now it's at this point, if I wanted to count my stitches, I have all of those stitches that are written in the pattern, right? But let me pull this out some. Here we are again. Here are all of my markers. Let me pull them out so you can see them on mine and then you can check them on yours. Same thing applies. Here are my sleeves, here's my back, here's my overlapping button band, and here are my fronts. But now I have extra stitches here. I maintain that center like knit stitch between the 2 markers here, and that's going to be throughout the entire pattern. Okay, once that's complete, you then go ahead and you look at your row 2, you'll slip 1, knit to the last 5 stitches, and then work row 2 of your button band. So you want to make sure you have your button band instructions, which just happen to be knit 5. So this entire row 2 is just a knit 5. All right. So row 2 is just knitting. So let's go ahead and knit all of row 2, and I want to work rows 3 and 4 together. However, I do want to show you how you will knit into that yarn over, and I want to show you if you messed up and you didn't do that yarn over, how do you create one? So let's go ahead, knit over to your first raglan marker. When you get to that first raglan marker, you will see some string laying on your needle that looks like it's a mistake, right? When you first started knitting, you probably had mistakes like that on accident. But this is not a mistake. That is an actual yarn over. Now, that yarn over, we can knit it two different ways. We can either knit it directly into that front leg and knit it as normal and have a nice big open gap, right? That big hole. And that's what I did on my raglan sweaters, right? I did a big hole at the raglan shaping. I liked it. If you don't want your holes as large, you can always knit them through the back leg. So it will twist that yarn over just a little bit and it makes it just a little bit smaller, okay? You can do that. Now, if you get to one of your stitches and all of a sudden that yarn over is not there, like you get to your marker and you're like, my yarn over is not there, all you're gonna do is find the string that is going between the stitch between your two markers here and the last stitch that you did. Take your left-hand needle and just scoop up that string. There's your yarn over, right? You have it in place. In that situation, if you did that, make sure you knit it through the front leg because you want to make it a little bit larger. Because if you didn't already pre-plan for that yarn over, meaning you're creating one after the fact, it's already going to be tight. So in that case, you would want to knit it through the front. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and knit that one through the back just to see how it looks. And then I slip my marker, knit one, slip my marker. I come to my next yarn over. I can choose to knit it through the front or the back. Because I did the last one through the back, I'm going to keep it consistent, knit it through the back just to make those holes a little bit tighter. Totally up to you. You can do either way. Your sweater will look lovely, whichever way you choose. Just remember, if it looks like a mistake because it's just this random string of yarn, that's what you want. That is the yarn over. All right, so now let's go ahead and finish row 2. Hit pause, join me back here, and we'll do row 3 together. When you get to the end of your row, it should be pretty darn easy. It's starting to look pretty good, right? And you are absolutely right if you are getting some of that garter stitch right underneath that kind of nice stockinette, and that stockinette is going to just curl and look really lovely in your finishing. Now we're going to move on to row 3. So once again, I'm going to pull in my highlighter because I don't want to mess up anything, right? So it says work the 5 stitches in the buttonhole band pattern. So again, I know I will be working row 3 over here. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of leave that right there. And then it says I will slip my marker, which that's the button band marker. And then I have a bracket here. So it says knit to the marker, yarn over, slip marker, knit 1, slip marker, yarn over, SSK, knit to 2 stitches before marker, knit 2 together, yarn over, slip marker, knit 1, slip marker, yarn over. And it says to do that twice. And then it says knit to the marker, slip marker, knit 5. Now, you might be like, what is going on, Marley? I thought you said we were doing raglan shaping, which is just increases. Why are there decreases in there now? Well, we want to keep that raglan shaping with really uniform yarn overs, and we want to keep them as consistent as possible. And we don't necessarily want the extra stitches that we get with that yarn over. So we're going to work a decrease to counteract that increase in order to get that really lovely line of yarn overs all the way down our raglan. So as we are working down this, we have decreases that go along with our increase, okay? I know it might seem confusing, but it will make sense when all is said and done. And I'm going to mark off how many stitches I would have when I'm done, because it does help. Remember, I'm doing the 5th number in, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on this row, I will be increasing to 104. Okay. All right. You guys with me? We're going to work on this together. Remember, we want to have our buttonhole band. We're going to start with this to begin with. So, okay, so we're jumping in and we're beginning with our button band. So we slip our first stitch and then we immediately go to a knit 2 together. So we're going to take our right hand needle, go over here towards the left of the second stitch on our left-hand needle, insert our needle through that second stitch and the first one as if to knit, and then literally knit them together, okay? So we did a knit two together. Go ahead and pull your yarn down to make sure that that all sets into place. Now we do a yarn over twice, and that is exactly what it sounds like. We bring our yarn forward, up around our needle once, hold that in place, bring our yarn forward, up around our needle again. So we get 2 yarn overs there. Can you see that? 2 yarn overs. So we have yarn over twice, and now we do an SSK. So we go into the next stitch as if to knit, and we slip it off. I feel like that is in the way from you seeing. So we slip it, go into the next stitch as if to knit, and slip it off. So you have 2 stitches on your right-hand needle. Take your left-hand needle and put it into the front leg of those 2 stitches, and then knit them together. So what you're going to see here, you get that big old gap right there. That's what we want. That's going to be our buttonhole. Okay, that's going to be our buttonhole. Now we carry on. So we slip our marker. I got to bring my instructions back. Now that the buttonhole is done, I need to have my actual instructions back over here for me. Okay, so I slip my marker, and this is the bracket. So we knit to our marker. So I'm going to knit to my marker. I'm over here, and this is my marker right there. Whoop, come on. All right, knit to my marker, so that's right there. That's to my marker. I yarn over, slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. Now notice I didn't do a decrease over here, so we're increasing on our front with that yarn over. We don't have a decrease over here, but over here on the sleeve, we don't want our sleeves bigger. So we did a yarn over to maintain that yarn over, but so that we don't get an extra stitch on our sleeve, we immediately do a decrease. So we do an SSK. So I go into the stitch as if to knit and slip it off, go into the stitch as if to knit and slip it off, take my left-hand needle, put it into the front leg of those 2 stitches, and then knit them together. So I worked an increase and an immediate decrease, so I have not changed the stitch count on my sleeves. Now I go ahead and I'm going to knit to 2 stitches before my marker, all right? Because we're going to do the same thing on the other edge of our sleeve, right? Because we don't want any extra stitches there, but we definitely want that yarn over detail. So we're going to work a decrease over here, but the decrease is not an SSK over here. It will be a knit 2 together. So I get to 2 stitches before my marker. There it is right there. So there's my marker. There's the 2 stitches. I'm going to knit 2 together. So I go into the second stitch and the first stitch together, and I knit them together just like so. Then I yarn over. So I did a decrease and an increase, so they cancel each other out. Slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. That's where the bracket stops, and it says I'm supposed to do that twice. So now I go to the start of the bracket again. So the start of the bracket says knit to the marker, so I'm going to knit to my marker. So right now I'm knitting across the back, right? I'm knitting across the back because I worked an increase on the back. That's why there's no decrease over on this side of the marker right there, right? Because we want the extra stitches on the back. We don't want them on our sleeve. That's why we did the decrease along with the increase on the sleeve. Okay, and this just all has to do with the way you shape a top-down raglan piece, okay? So all of the raglan patterns will be different, but that's how this one is worked up. So I go all the way over to my marker on this first one, right? There's not a decrease over here because this is the back of my sweater, not my sleeves. Remember, it's on my sleeves that I don't want any sort of an extra stitch. So I want to make sure I get all the way over here. There it is. So there's my marker. I yarn over, slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. Now I do an SSK because this is my other sleeve, right? So I do an SSK, a slip, slip, knit. Now I knit to 2 stitches before my next marker. This is my sleeve. I'm working my sleeve stitches here, just to give you a sense of where we are on the actual piece. All right, so that's 2 stitches right there. So I'm going to knit 2 together, knit 2 together, yarn over, slip my marker, knit 1, slip my marker, yarn over. Then I knit to my button band, slip my button band marker, and I knit the last 5 stitches. So just to recap, we have increased our stitches on this front. We have not increased stitches on our sleeve, but we did get our yarn over hole there, our detail, right? Because we did those decreases in there along with the increase. We increased our stitches on the back. We did not increase on our sleeve here, and we did increase on our front. Okay? Whew, not too bad. Honestly, take your time with this row especially, and all the rows that are like this, because you want to make sure that you get all of those right, okay? Now that we've done those double increases on the button band, we need to know how to handle those. So on the next row, we want to get all the way over to those button band stitches so we can take care of those double yarn over increases. And once we've done that, you will be off to the races for this part of the pattern. So let's go ahead, pick up our work, and we will be on row 4 of the pattern here. So you will slip the first stitch, knit to the last 5 stitches, and that will be your buttonhole. So when we get to the last 5 stitches, we will be on row 4 of our buttonhole band pattern. We will knit 1, and then we will knit 1 and purl 1 into the double yarn over, and then we will knit 2. Okay, so we're going to get back to 5 stitches by doing a knit 1 and a purl 1 into our double yarn over. Let's go ahead, get over to where that button band is, and we can do that together. Okay, I have reached the last 5 stitches of my row. And this is where I'm going to follow along with my button band. I'm going to knit this stitch. I want to knit this one and then purl this one, and then I would finish up with these last 2 knits. Now, one thing I can do after I knit this one, when I go to purl this one, I can purl it through the front leg or the back leg. Totally up to me what I want to do. You decide on your end as well. If you go through the back leg, it'll make the hole just a little bit more snug. So I knit the first stitch, and then I knit this stitch. So I knit that part of the yarn over, let it fall off. Okay, so now I still have another yarn over on there. I'm supposed to purl it. So I can bring my yarn forward and then purl into that stitch, right? And then I would finish with the knit 2. And what you'll see here is I am getting a nice big buttonhole there. Now to me, that just looks a little bit bigger than what I want. I don't know if I just overstretched it a little bit. So I'm going to tink back out, and I'm going to do this one where I purl through the back leg. So I'm going to knit into that front one, and then this one I'm going to come in through the back leg just like so. Can you see that? I come in through the back and come up and purl. And when I do that, it just makes it just a little bit tighter. and then I knit the stitch. And now I get a little bit more of a tidy buttonhole. Ultimately, you want that buttonhole to fit your actual buttons. So if it's too big, it's absolutely pointless. So if you find that you need to tighten up your buttonhole, you can always purl through the back leg on that second stitch through the double yarn over, and it'll tighten it up nice and tidy. All right, now that we have worked rows 1 through 4 together, let's take a look at the instructions so that we know what we're supposed to do. Looking down here, after finishing row 4, we can see that we are supposed to repeat rows 1 through 4 however many times for the size you're making. Now, I know I need to repeat mine 8 times because I'm making the 2X size. Again, these numbers down here are to help you know what the stitch count is as you work those increases. Just a quick note here to point out that as you are repeating rows 1 through 4, you are still following along with the row count of the buttonhole band. So when you repeat rows 1 through 4 the first time, you're really on row 5, row 6, row 7, row 8 of your overall piece, and you're also on row 5, 6, 7, 8 of your button band. Then when you go to repeat 1 through 4 again, you're on rows 9, 10, 11, 12 of your overall piece, and you're also on rows 9 and 10 of the button band, and you go back to rows 1 and 2, so on and so forth. Hopefully that makes sense and it clears up any confusion. And with that, I am 100% confident that you can follow along with the section 1 instructions on your own. Be sure to keep track of what row you are on so you don't lose your place on the button band or on your increase rows. I do want to highly recommend that everybody use a lifeline. That way, should you make a mistake, you have a safe spot in your knitting that you can rip back to, and you won't possibly run the risk of losing one of those yarn overs, because it can be a real pain in the butt trying to get all of that situated, and it can all be saved with a simple lifeline. So make sure you use one of those. Once you have finished that part of the instructions, join me in the next video and I will help you carry on with the next step. I'm so excited to see your progress, you guys. As you're working along, don't forget to take pictures and share with me on social media. Use hashtag MarleyBird or hashtag MMMDI. And when I see your project, I will smash your like button. I'll see you guys later. Bye. Hey, real quick, while I have you here, I want to let you know it is not too late to join that Silver Platter experience. You can get all of the upgrades, including the ad-free PDF, the row-by-row checklist, the Breckenridge pattern, including all of the video content and extra videos all in one place. And let's not forget all of the bonus material that's added in there. It is a plethora of information. Think of it as a supercharged pattern. So if you're interested at all in the VIP experience, make sure you click that link in the video description box right down there below. We'd love to have you join us. Okay, see you in the next video.